if I had to look at my dash, do I want to be worked up and mad the majority of that time, or would I rather be laughing the majority of that time? Like, what energy do I want to bring out of this? And maybe it's not about being happy. Maybe it's about, I want to help as many people as I possibly can, and that will fulfill that dash, whatever it might be for you.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Life at 10 Tenths, where we inspire you to live at the pinnacle of your ability and purpose. As always, I'm Matt, he's Garrett, and we have a wonderful topic for you today. This is really, we get to kind of dive into like life a little bit here today and discuss like what's the meaning of life? Maybe not quite that deep, but what is the meaning of your life? Certainly is something that we get to discuss, Garrett, and its important role and how it helps us thrive in our business and everything else that we do as well. So good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, sir. Yeah, I'm excited to go into this. And, those of us that are, those of you that are in our community and in our coaching world, that Matt and I devour books. It's one of our things that we do when we're not doing all of our other stuff, is we like consuming knowledge and consuming information. And this came out of a book that we just recently read. It actually came out of the interview that we did with
Dan Martell.
Dan Martell. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And talking about, like, when you look at a gravestone, when you look at somebody's tombstone, there's really not a whole lot written on a lot of them. I mean, and he made the comment, if you're lucky, you might have a nice quote or something written about you of who you were. But for the most part, it's a year, a dash, and a year. And I grew up in a household that my mother loves graveyards. Always has. And we used to travel, and she'd be like, cemetery, we're going over there. You guys go do your stuff. And we would go and we'd walk through these really old cemeteries. And every single time I looked at a gravestone, I always paid attention to the year that was born and the year that people passed away. And, kind of do the math. Oh, they were 20 years old. They were, 100 years old, and kind of like try to find the oldest people that you can find in the cemetery. But what Dan said, which I thought was really interesting, is the dash is the most important piece. And this got me thinking, which led us to talking, which led us to this episode that we're going to go into today, because I've never really given that much importance to what that dash is.
Yeah. What are you going to make the most, quote unquote, of your dash, right? What is it there for? Knowing that there's going to be a begin date and an end date. And at that end date, like, you really don't take anything with you, right? All the things that you accumulate, that happen here on Earth, like, you don't take with you. And so the dash kind of becomes this representation of what are you leaving as well? What are you leaving behind? What is the impact? And I will say, before we dive deep into this, Garrett, because a lot of people are like, oh, here we go. Like, we're going to be thinking really big and I got to become like, Mother Teresa here. It's like, no, that's not what we're talking about, because the impact that we can make can be so outrageously small, but yet so incredibly big in terms of its meaning. And I think that's where we get into understanding, okay, how do we want to run that dash, right? Pun intended there.
And Matt, I think going down that line, I think what really came up for me is that there's the mentality of, like, the world is how we interpret the world around us. We get the choice to take the outside influences that are coming in and be like, that really pisses me off, or that really, like, I can find the joy in that. I can see the light in that I can see around the darkness. And we make these choices all day long in how things affect us. We can be walking through the store parking lot and somebody backs out and we go, didn't you see me here? Or you can be like, oh my gosh, it's like, that's a young family and they probably have a lot of stuff going on in that car right now. The craziness of young children and things that are happening in their world. And they're probably totally preoccupied. And did they do it to me on purpose? Or is it just life? And we're all sharing this world together. And, like, man, I remember when my kids were that young. Interesting. Keep moving forward. And we have these choices as we go through this dash that we're living in, this life that we're living in. That's what really came out for me is it's like, not that I have to go and change the world in that time of that dash, but what do I want to have that dash represent for me in my energy? Do I want it to be positive? Do I want it to be uplifting? Do I want it to be something that I look back on and go, man, I was happy the majority of that time of that dash, or I was a curmudgeon, you know, the majority of the time, just upset with everything around me and who was doing what and why was it not in the thing that I wanted? Like, what do I want it to be? Like, I think you got to start there first, like before you want to go and really make big changes with whatever you want that dash to look like.
Well, I think they're starting with the emotion, right? I think that's the thing. Like, we all want to be happy, I think, right? I don't think any of us want to not be happy, like purposefully, but like, I'm going to wake up and be angry today because that's what will make me happy. Oh, wait a minute. I just totally messed it up. And, Gary Vee is big on like promoting happiness and helping people figure out like what's really going to make you happy and kind of trying to decouple materialism and the things that we seek with happiness. Not to say that achieving success from a financial position or a business position isn't a good thing at all, right? It's just the question for you is it coupled with your happiness? And how do you drive that? And I do find like when this ties into John Maxwell's speech that I saw a few weeks ago, which I don't know if I mentioned it on a prior podcast episode here yet or not, but somebody had asked him, hey, what are your markers of a significant life? And he had three things. One is knowing your purpose. The second is rising to your potential. And the third, the most important that I think relates to this dash is sowing seeds that benefit others. How many seeds do you sow that benefit others? Not what do people pick up and harvest from that, but like, are you actually just intentionally laying the groundwork, right? Which you don't know what's going to come of it. But if the intention is there to sow seeds that benefit others versus just focusing on what benefits yourself, I think that drives a lot of happiness. Like I've never seen somebody, Garrett, do something that's nice for somebody in a way, or try to rise to their own potential, which can serve their family in a good way, and say like, well, I'm really unhappy that I did that, right? And I think that's a place that we got to look at too.
I've always looked at that, Matt, as we talk about the power of gratitudes, and a lot of times when we look at gratitudes, it's us by ourselves, and we're thinking about the things we're grateful for, the things that we hold gratitude for in our life. When you do something nice for somebody on the outside, I've always looked at that's external gratitude energy being given out to people. Whether they accept it or not, or however they interpret it, I think it's a really good point you just brought up, because we can't, and this goes back to me in the parking lot, like we can't make anybody interpret what we're doing good or bad. Like that's up to them of how they want to, the baggage that they're holding on to about how they want to interpret that energy coming in. Because we've all done something nice for somebody and had them snap at us and be like, hold on a second. Like I was trying to do something nice for you. There's no ill intention. But, and then you have somebody going, well, you just, keep your charity and give it to somebody else. It's like, whoa, like sorry, like I was trying to do something good. We can't force that hand on that side. But I like what you're saying. I like John Maxwell's approach is sowing these seeds and giving out good, because at some point, like that's that external gratitude that definitely gives back to your soul and your journey and the place that you're, living right now. Like this is your opportunity to give out as much as you can.
Well, and I have in my notes, which I'm not sure if it was directly correlated to the dash, because my notes did crash in the middle of Dan's talk.
It's an Apple product.
When we had him last week. Yeah, it's an Apple problem. But he said something about being involved unattached, right? And to me, it's something that we've obviously learned, and we talk about a lot, which is don't being attached to the outcome. And so when it comes to even our happiness and doing good things, like you do something good for somebody and they react, and then you're like, wait a minute, no, you were supposed to be grateful. It's like, well, okay, now you're being attached to that outcome of doing something good. So who are we actually sowing that seed for, right? And I think this comes into just even our everyday moments. I look at that dash, I'm like, gosh, it would be cool to like do something really big where people are like, hey, after I'm gone, like Matt Benelli did this or whatever. Yeah, but is that for me? I can't take that with me, right? What if it's just, I was sowed a bunch of seeds that made a difference and people don't even know that it's me, right? And it could be just little everyday things, like when you're in that parking lot, that person's backing up, instead of you freaking out, you're just like, oh, let me just stop. Or, maybe I do need to honk my horn so they don't hit. And they're like, oh my gosh. You're like, hey, no big deal. And then your kid in the back seat sees you do that, right? What seed is that sowing? Or being empathetic to the person who's backing up, maybe making a mistake, maybe doing it intentionally, who knows? What seed does it sow when you don't react in a angry way, right? Those are those little seeds sometimes that I think about. I was like, those are the real seeds that I think that we can plant every single day that can really improve the quality of our own life and kind of make something of that dash.
Well, I'm happy we started here, Matt, because I think, like as you said, energy is where this is all kind of like. I look at these little opportunities that we have throughout the day, and they're all transfers of energy. We have our energy, we transfer that off to somebody else. Somebody else has energy, they transfer that back onto us. All of us get a little bit of say in, do we take that person's energy that we're surrounding ourselves with? But a lot of it is subconscious. A lot of it we have no say in whatsoever. If you walk out of a store and somebody yells at you because they're having a bad day or they've got something going on in their life, or you can feel their energy. Let's say they don't even yell at you. Let's just say you can tell there's something bad happening over there. There's people that are mad at each other. That energy, even though it's across the parking lot, actually can
You can
affect us. And so, because all of a sudden our alertness goes up of going, I hope everybody's okay. I hope there's not something bad happening. I hope there's something, like, maybe I'm misinterpreting it. Maybe they're celebrating. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, good, moving along. So what I'm saying is that in this transfer of energy, I think that in this space in between the year that we're born and the year that we pass, I think it's a great way to go about it, is how much positive, constructive, uplifting energy can we give out to those around us, whether it is, creating something that's going to benefit others, or whether it's just going out and being somebody that gives external gratitude out on a day-to-day basis. It's amazing when you just change your focus and your mindset of your day, starting it off with like, I hope I don't have another day like I did yesterday, to, you know what, I'm going to have a positive day today. I'm going to give out a lot of great energy that I'm going to move forward with today. And it's two very different. One, you're hoping not to have a bad day like you did yesterday. The other one is you're literally saying, I'm going to go out and bring great energy to myself and those around me. And it's amazing what you can create. Now, imagine if you did that often. Imagine if you did that, on more than just a daily basis. Maybe it's part of your business plan. Maybe it's part of your credo that you have for who you are as a human being on this planet. From there, Matt, this is where I think you can build some really amazing, powerful things. And I am going to make a statue for you. You will be remembered. We're going to put it in Charleston. I'm not going to tell you where it's at. It's going to show up somewhere. There will be a statue of Matt and people are going to walk by.
Yeah, but I still got to do something significant for people to want to.
This is a beautiful statue. Who is Matt Pinelli? Well, you will be known because somebody put a statue there of you.
That is an interesting thing. It's like, hey, what figures are historic because we actually have something that keeps reminding people of this person. And I'll also say this, because I can hear some people saying, okay, that's great. Just be positive, be happy all the time. And there's days that you're not going to be, right? And I think this is part of it too. I mean, even just recently, a few days ago, I got pretty upset at a situation and lashed out at somebody that I shouldn't have done. And it took me a while to cool off. And then I apologized. And I was like, because we're going to have those moments too, where we are upset, we're unhappy. And I think one of the challenges with growing from that is being able to take a moment. And I used to not be good at doing that. I used to not be good at taking a moment and saying, wait, hey, how did I contribute to that situation that got to that point where I had that reaction? And so I think building mechanisms into and this will kind of get into like a goal setting kind of almost thought process, is like, how do you build mechanisms into your day and into your week and into your month and in your life in general to help check your own self and have grace for yourself too when you do something that you're not proud of? And how do you acknowledge it too? Because I think a lot of times, Garrett, we'll do things that we're not proud of and we'll hide it. We'll bury it because we're like, oh, that makes me not a good person. And if I bring that up, it's going to just, recount how bad I am, so to speak. When it's like, no, bringing it up and acknowledging it and working through it actually is part of the process, I think, of like making that happiness come back out so that you can be like, yeah, you know what? That was wrong. It was my bad. And I would like to move on, and you do your best that you can.
Well, so this is where I want to add in, is that I don't think it's about always being happy all the time. I'm a big believer in the ones and the tens. And when you have those really, really, really bad days where you have just pure anger, just being that mad, is actually one of those things that is a part of also you experiencing complete joy and complete happiness on the extreme level. Like you got to be able to see both sides of it. Otherwise, you're just kind of in this middle of this road area. And I think that's why, they talk about like, you watch somebody who has a real love for life. Like I remember we were at a Porsche driving event years back, and there was this guy that was Puerto Rican, and he was just like, "Oh, you got to, like, if you're going to get a Porsche, get a red Porsche, like, because it's passion and it's love." And like, this guy was like over the top, but he also had this side of him that you could see, like, I hope I never see this guy mad, because he had this intense, intense passion for life. And out of all the people there, he's the one I remember. Out of all the people that were at this event, both my wife and I could walk into the kitchen and be like, because passion is love. And she'd be like, God, that was a great dinner we were out with him. Like, so I think like it's not always about being positive, but I think it's about having that ability of having some control over it and understanding, like, don't hold back on it. Like, give, grow, affect people around you, bring in positive energy as much as we can. But I think you got to have both sides of it. The light has to have the dark, and that's a natural thing in our world. You can't just always be one way. It's got to have its yin and yang.
Yeah. Otherwise, you don't know what the other is, right? Without that contrast. And I think this brings us to like, okay, we know this energy is there, and we all want to experience over time more happiness than sadness or anger. So then, okay, what are the things, like what drives us? How do we discover that purpose and understanding maybe some of the more mechanics of the dash, so to speak, of like, okay, great, want to be happy. Now, how am I going to do that? What am I going to do to achieve that? And, how am I going to be in the world? Right. Because I think that then a lot of people say, well, great, now I want to fund and fuel my happiness life. What does that look like? How do I uncover this purpose?
So let's kick this back and forth here for a second. I'll start off with, I think first is you need to be aware. You need to be aware that you even remotely have control of this, because I think a lot of people go through this world that the world is happening to them, and they're just reacting to their surroundings or reacting to what's going on. And they will come back and basically say, man, this is what happened to me today, instead of this is what I went out and found today, or this is what my intent was of my day to go out and to locate and to seek out and to create. And so, Matt, for me, I think number one is you need to understand that you actually have control over the world that's happening around you, to a point of what you want to see and how you want to interpret it. So that's my number one, admitting that you actually have a say in this, and you have some control over this thing. And I think that's where I would start.
Yeah, I completely agree. Taking that responsibility, I think, then demystifies whatever environment you're currently in. So that doesn't become the thing that helps you develop what your purpose or passion is, right? Because I think a lot of times we'll be like, well, what's my purpose? And we'll tie it to, we'll use real estate as an example, since we're going through business planning with real estate agents right now. It's like when we talk about, and I've had these conversations, like, okay, like how do we define your core values, your purpose, and maybe a mission? Now, when we talk about a mission statement, yeah, we probably want to tie it to what we do. But a lot of people will get stuck in being like, well, my purpose, and they're just thinking about it only in the lane of real estate. And I've challenged some people who I know a little bit more about them, so we can have this conversation. I'm like, well, what if your purpose has nothing to do with real estate? Which, in the back of my head, I'm like, you're going to push a client away if you do this. They're not going to want to sell real estate, right? But truly, it's like, well, what if real estate's just a vehicle for you right now to get to somewhere else that you really want to do? Maybe it's not about making a ton of money in real estate. It's about using just the cash flow right now to fund and fuel something else that can either drive wealth or drive other purpose. And when we start to look outside our current lane, I think we can start to explore, and we got to start to go back to childhood, right? And think about, like, what did I want to be when I grow up? What do I want to do? What do I want to give? Because when you watch a child interact, like, they are so purposeful, and they're also giving, and they're also not giving in certain ways. Like, don't take that, that's mine. But in the other side, like Victoria's here, like, I'm going to get little hair clips I want to share with my friends when I get to school. I'm like, that's really cool that's the first thing you think about. But all kids do that, right? And so when we can detach this lane we're in, because kids don't have the lane, they haven't developed it yet, right? You ask them one day what they want to be when they grow up, and another day it could be two completely different things, which is so cool. And we need to do that. So that's what would be the second thing, Garrett, I would encourage people to do, is detach from the current lane you're in. So take responsibility for where you are, detach from your current lane so that you can start to think outside the box. and really just noodle on, right? Hey, what is, and listen to what God in the universe is telling you, because there's probably a message being delivered that we just need to be quiet enough to hear.
It's interesting as you say detach, because we watch this all the time. And with business planning, as we're doing right now, the amount of people that will come up to us, Matt, and say, I'm not driven by this income goal that everybody's supposed to be driven by. I'm not driven by, and it's like, this goes back to like this misunderstanding of like, as you make more money, this will solve all the problems. I'll be happy. This will make it all work. And it's like, I think some of the most aware people are the ones that realize that's not what really drives me, but I am driven by this. And this happens to be a vehicle to make all this happen. I keep thinking of my friend Chris here. He's a engineer for Caltrans. Caltrans takes care of all of California's roads and transportation. And he's been doing it for years. It's a great, great, great steady job. He shows up, does his work Monday through Friday, and he's done. And he's always just been this guy that you just know he's got that type of job. What you don't know about him is that in all of his free time, for as long as I've known, when he gets a free second, he travels to Africa and he spends most of his time helping small, underdeveloped, cities and townships start to grow and build schools and water sources. And he's a master with his engineering of building water collection systems from local rivers or helping them build wells. He understands how to do it on a really high level. That's what lights that guy up. Like if I was to sit there and say, hey, Chris, like, how's work going? And he'd be like, well, I don't know. Like, it's a job. It is a full job. He really doesn't love it. The most excited I ever saw him get talking was about an interchange that they were building here in town. And it was it did not have the perfectly round clover leaf getting onto the freeway. It had one that had a sharp bend in the middle of it. He goes, that's how people died. He's like, he was so like overly engineering. He's like, you don't ever put a tight bend in the middle of a nice radius when you're developing roads for people that are not great drivers. That's about as excited as this job I ever saw him get about. But you talk about Africa, and all of a sudden, like, you could be 3 beers deep with the guy because all of a sudden he's like, I want to talk to you about this, and I'm going to share with you what we're working on and all these different projects. That is the happiness for him. Like when we talk about this dash, Matt, that will be way more about what his dash is about than what his job is about. And I think this is important for people to figure out and understand. And I think what you said is like stepping off the side, detaching from your current world you're in right now is a huge piece. And we're going to do this with the life list and business planning coming up here today. We're doing business planning. Today.
Today, not your today.
Which speaking of that right now, Matt, if anybody's listening and they're like, I wish I would have done a business plan. I wish I would have got one together. Ours are all recorded. Our sessions, there's 3 sessions. They're all recorded. They're at Life at 10 Tenths. They're in the 11 Circle. Come and join us. Come check them all out. You can sit down and binge a business plan and get this all put together for yourself. The opportunity is there, but that's one of the pieces we take people through is where are you in your life right now? Let's look at really what the next 10 years looks like, the next 25 years looks like. And then let's sit here and say, okay, let's build a life list, which all this allows you to detach from your current world you're in right now.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Come snag a 7-day free trial. You'll be able to binge all of the business planning sessions.
It's the cheat code. That's what I keep telling you. There is a cheat code to this if you want a business plan.
Yeah, the cheat code is grab the 7-day free trial and do it all right in those days. I believe you'll experience a lot of value. You'll want to hang out in the 11 Circle after that. But I think this is a good point to bring up, Garrett, too, because a lot of people don't do this work when they're thinking about building a business plan. They go right to what's my goals, which, by the way, I love goal setting, which we're going to do today. And I love vision boards and all that stuff. But a lot of people just stick with basic, like, what's my income goal? Here's why it's my income goal. And one thing I've learned, and I'm not the best with personal finance, so to speak, is that more money doesn't solve the problems. More money, it's understanding how you handle your money. And if you can detach yourself from money in general, right, you'll probably end up with more of it than you know what to do with. But I think the reason why our society today, particularly millennial generation, is struggling with a lot of consumer debt and things like that is one, we just weren't taught a lot of financial literacy in school. we're talking about like how to do taxes and things like that, understanding cash flow. It's like when you're growing up and you're getting your first credit card, the first thing that they tell you is go get a loan to go to school. So like your first experience with money is like borrow a lot of it to go get an education that may or may not guarantee income later on in life. And it's like, oh, so if we're planting that early on, we create financial challenges for ourselves, right? And so it's not that the more money, it's figuring out how do we solve that problem. And I think developing the passion and purpose allow that to happen because you also then detach from the material successes, which by the way are great. I still I got them in pursuit. I want the car and all that kind of stuff too myself. So I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but that detachment I think makes a big difference, right? And then Dan said one other thing too in our session about this, and he said it's not necessarily about what you do, but how you do it. And so if you choose something that you do that you really love and enjoy, you'll probably do it in a way that is more inspiring to fulfill that dash more so than what is done. But if you're doing something that you don't like, then you're probably not going to do it in a way that would fulfill that dash for you either, right? So there is a correlation between how you do and what you do, I think, in a way.
Well, this is where, like, I have watched in my lifetime people that have jobs that we would look at and say it's a good job. It's not like you're not making the top, money or things like that, and you're not going to be able to. And I don't want to put down like because really it's amazing when you watch somebody that truly, truly, truly loves what they do. They're making good money. They're surviving. They're setting a little money aside. They're living a comfortable life. They're not extravagant. They're not driving. I think of like my mother-in-law's. She had hired somebody to take care of her yard, and this lady is so sweet. She is so nice. She drives. She has zero debt, and that was the thing. We had a conversation with her. She has zero debt. She has a little teeny house that she owns. She drives an old Chevy square body truck that is beat to all what
might be worth quite a bit of money though today. A lot of people are looking for those old square bodies.
Not this one. Not this one. But you sit there and you get a chance to talk to her, and she is one of the most vibrant, happy, excited people. She knows more about every plant in that whole landscaping than I would ever even care to want to know about. But she loves what she's doing. And I think you look at this and sometimes we go, wouldn't she like to be bigger? There's lots of people out there that go like, wouldn't she like to own her own company? Wouldn't she like to be making this amount of money and this and that? And she doesn't. Like the more I've talked to her, she could start her own nursery and do all kinds of stuff and a whole service. She's like, I just like doing my thing. I like showing up, taking care of people's yards, moving on to the next one. And she's a master of it. And I think like everybody's got their own journey. That dash in the middle, Matt, like is everybody's own journey. And I mean, my feeling is like, make it with as much positive energy and as much excitement. And if you're not happy, if you're in a situation that you are miserable in, you don't get another dash.
Yeah, no, that's the only one you have. Yeah.
It's all you got. So it's like, if you're not happy, fix it. Fix the situation, which means you might need to make some really tough decisions. And it might be your job. It might be relationships. It might be all kinds of stuff. But you just need to stop and say, okay, I'm not willing to be like to have the rest of my dash go in this way. I want to have it be a different story. And we all have that at our fingertips. I just recently did it. We all have it at our fingertips.
We do. And one last thought that I have, Garrett, is Dan also said this. Somebody asked a question about how do I know what to do to move myself forward? I'm reading 3 different books, right? One on audio, one I'm reading physically. And, is that productive? Are you trying to get through it? And Dan had an interesting answer because instead of saying like, well, don't read 3 books at a time, which is like in the back of my head, I'm like, that's a lot to read at once. He just said, you know what? You got to look at those things that you do. And, maybe at the end of every week, just ask yourself, did it feel good? Like, did it feel good doing those things? Did those things make me feel good? Because if they did, then great, continue on. If it didn't make you feel good, probably should adjust something. If it doesn't feel good reading 3 books at a time, maybe just try one of them, right? And what a great, simple way to like wrap all of that stuff up into like, hey, at the end of the week, just ask yourself, did the things that I did this week feel good? If not, let's make an adjustment. If so, let's figure out how we can amplify those things because the dash is probably going to look pretty good if we have a lot more like, hey, that felt good checked off at the end of the week.
Well, in our society we're in right now too, Matt. I mean, we're bombarded by activities all over the place. I mean, and I think it's easy to read 10 books at a time because every single time I turn around, I've got a list of books here on my desk of everything that they've got great reviews. People have said, "Oh my gosh, this book changed my life." And all I can do in my world is just write down the name of the book and the author and go, I'm going to get to it at some point. Maybe never, by the way. There's probably great stuff in there. Some of those books I will never read, but it's one of those is that you can only do so much with that energy. And if you can overwhelm yourself really fast, we watch people do it. You could tell the person that asked that question when we were on that session, Matt, they were in a place of, this is overwhelming me. How do I do? And it's like, you are taking in too much stuff. It's like, it's one thing to drink out of a cup. It's another thing to take a bucket and pour it over your head. And how much water did you actually drink? Like, you might have gotten a little sip out of that bucket that just poured over your head, where you probably drank the entire cup of water. It's like, take it in stride, take these opportunities that are around you and don't burn yourself out. And, this all circles back around, Matt, and we can wrap it up probably on this, is that you've got this incredible time between when you're born to when you do pass away. We all do. At some point, this life is going to come to an end. That there is no ifs,
We're not
ands, or
getting
buts
out of
about
this
that.
alive. That is for sure.
And make the most of it. Make the most of it. And, I know it came out earlier, be positive and things like this. But I mean, if I had to look at my dash, do I want to be worked up and mad the majority of that time? Or would I rather be laughing the majority of that time? Like, what energy do I want to bring out of this? And maybe it's not about being happy. Maybe it's about, I want to help as many people as I possibly can. And that will fulfill that dash, whatever it might be for you. Well, in the meantime, we want to say thank you for tuning into this podcast today. If you like this podcast, one, share it with somebody that you feel needs to hear it. It might be a family member of yours, it might be a child, it might be a colleague in your office, but share this podcast if you feel it might affect and positively impact somebody else, because that's what Matt and our mission is to help as many people and affect as many people as we possibly can. If you want to check out our coaching program, go to lifeat10tenths.com. You will go, just scroll down. You will find all of our options that we have that you can be part of our world. And the one that I'm going to encourage you to check out is the 11 Circle. The 11 Circle is an amazing group of people. It is our coaching community is what we have. We do weekly coaching in there. We have book reviews that we do. We have special guests that come on. This is where Matt and I hang out the majority of our time and interact with an amazing group of people. Matt, it is so fun to watch this group start to grow out and the people that are interacting in there and all the energy that's starting to come out of it. It's really awesome.
It really is. And it's fun when you see people chalk up some wins too and share those in there. And also when people are sharing their struggles and get the support from the community too, which is really, really cool to see. So I echo your encouragement of everybody checking out. And remember, that's the cheat code, the 7-day free trial into the 11 Circle. If you want to build a business plan, the cheat code's right there in front of you. Come grab it and take it and run with it. And we hope that you love it so much you'd like to stick around.
Yeah, and referrals too, Matt. I'm starting to watch referrals really get passed inside the group too, and that makes me so happy because that is, helping each other out, growing together. So, Matt, thank you, sir. Thank you to everybody who tuned in and listened to the episode today, and we will be back with more.
Take care, everybody.